So, Gerrit, do we have another question from?
Well, we have many questions coming in, but I'm trying to select the topics and trying to fit it into the discussion that we're having right here. And it might be a bridge for you, Martin. Obviously, I know your line where you're going. And one of the topics that we want to address here today is also the matter of ethics, right? Mm-hmm. And what we've seen coming up in a few questions, both on Twitter and in the chat, is this subject of money. And on two sides, people are asking, so in how far does the money, or the subvention, how to call it officially, is that in the mix with the educational arguments or other arguments? And the other thing is, that's a question from one of our convention bureaus watching, what would you advise convention bureaus that don't have such a deep pockets, how to deal with the topic of subvention? So maybe you could go a little bit into that.
Okay, so we're going into ethics, we're going into money. This is sounding interesting.
Exactly.
Okay. Complicated. I would open the discussion by making one observation, and that is that the world is not fair. I know this may sound a little obvious, but I mean it in a very profound way, that there are many Congress centers around the world which would argue that because they have a professional outsourced management company which is required to operate commercially, that the rates they are charging are commercial. And therefore it's unfair for them to compete against a center which is offering government subsidies. Now, the reality of almost every convention center that's ever been built is that they've been built with subsidized money. Free land, maybe there's revenue coming from another building which is on the same site. So the fact that the operator, the management company, can charge a commercial rent doesn't mean that it gives a return on the capital that was invested. So right from the start, you're talking about an unfair bidding system. Now, I know many destinations which do not have an actual subvention budget and claim that they are the ones who never buy business. And yet, hidden away in all kinds of subtle ways, there is added value being provided to the organizer, which if it was stripped out and described in monetary terms, would be a pretty hefty amount. So that's my kickoff, but maybe Juan Jose, you want to make some comments on this first of all.
This is a hot topic.
Yeah.
The topic of ethics and also the subventions. I would say that there are the destinations now, the marketing budget is changing to the event support budget. There is like a change in all destination, and some part of some amount of the marketing budget is going into the event support budget. In my personal opinion, I would never give a single euro to one client if they come to my destination. My recommendation is, as I said at the beginning, that you have to develop tools to help the client to increase the attendance of sponsored exhibitors and Congress delegates. So you have to be a partner, not a supplier, as I mentioned at the beginning. But that would be my point of view at this moment.
Okay.
So it's probably not a surprise that I like money. And I like money for my association because we need it. A World Congress and Exhibition revenue represents 40% in our biannual budget. Mm-hmm. And we need this money in order to keep our membership fees on a reasonable level. The other day, my colleague Andel Misch wrote me an email saying, okay, the convention center is free of charge. That's very nice, but we will pay it anyway.
One way or another.
In one way or another. Subventions, I'm very happy to get it if I'm not imposed with things which I will not allow to do. Meaning that we have to do big parties with whatever and this and that. No. Subvention, if there is a subvention, it's my association who has to decide how to use it. So behind there is always a tricky heritage behind or something.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, well, I think that sometimes, particularly for the not-so-large associations, the mid-sized ones, that the idea of subventions is pretty overplayed anyway. We get a number of offers of very nice things, marketing support and so on, and all of this. And I have to agree with Helga that, first of all, I would welcome it, because what I want to put on is the best Distripress show I can. And if by that venue offering me some sort of discount that I don't need to use my own funds for, that stretches the budget that bit further, means we can put on a little bit more of an effort, maybe bring in an extra speaker or something like that. So I'm all in favour of it. I don't see, I mean, you can call subvention a dirty word, I don't see it in that way. I agree with Martin, the world's not fair. Each city is not equally attractive. So the ones that are more attractive probably need to do less in terms of what they do in this line, because they get more business naturally. You're likely to see a city that's not perceived as being as attractive having to work a bit harder. That to me is a totally natural way of life, and I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah. What you will also often find is that cities which have subvention budgets often will have those budgets for a very strategic reason. So they will be targeting specific events which tie in with the economic development strategy of the destination. So a similar sized event will not actually attract a subvention, whereas the event which they're trying to attract inward investment and venture capital and knowledge transfer into their destination to really build that industry strategically, of course they will put something in there because they can draw on the funding which is available through the economic development side of that city, rather than from a tourism type of promotion. We've discussed ethics as a topic at the ICCA Congress last year in Puerto Rico, and it's on our agenda for Shanghai this year. And I've been approached by various members saying that ICCA should write a code of ethics. Gosh, I'm not sure that I have the philosophical background for that. So I responded to them in a very simple way, which is to say that in terms of bidding, whether you're a supplier or you're an association, you should be totally comfortable with your ethical behavior being published. So if it appears in the local newspaper, if as an association, all the members of the association can read about what's going on, if you are comfortable and they are comfortable with that appearing in the newspaper and your circulars, then you're normally in a reasonably good place. If you would be worried by that, then I suspect you have an ethical problem, either as a supplier or as a client.
It can be a perception problem, though, can't it? That what we would do a site visit and we would allow our hotels and flights to be paid, and I think it's pretty standard in this business.
Yeah.
I tell you what, in other industries it's not standard. We have Walmart Canada coming to speak with us, and I said, can I offer you a flight or a hotel? They said, absolutely not. We don't take anything from anyone. So there are just different perceptions of this.
So you do need to query that. You do need to look at if there isn't a section on ethics within the bid manual, you should ask about it. You should be very precise, because it may actually help you to educate the association to write this stuff down so that they are not then being approached by people offering Rolex watches or holidays for their partners or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Coming to the session that we have on ethics in the Congress in Puerto Rico, it came to my mind the example of the FIFA World Cup.
Qatar or Russia?
Both. There was so many complaints from ICCA members because they invested a huge amount of money. We're talking about 30 million euros, some of them. And in the RFP of the World Cup, they never mentioned that they were looking at destination where the football should be developed. So in the decision-making process, they choose, as you know, Russia, wonderful country, and Qatar, wonderful option. With this, and they were mentioning that they made that decision because in those countries they wanted to develop more the football. You have to say in advance that you want to develop the football, so you don't have another 5 countries bidding for that and spending huge amounts of money
England felt very insulted by that after all the money they spent. Mind you, it's probably true.
Gerrit has another question.
Yeah,
or
no, well,
comment?
I step in quite quickly because what I see online is that we have viewers in Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Convention Bureau, and they write that they're quite a starting convention bureau, and they're actually asking, and maybe people in the room are also wondering, what is a subvention policy? Just maybe one
Okay,
step
let me
back.
explain.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you, Zimbabwe. A subvention policy is a financial support system for events which are brought into a city, whether it's sporting or cultural or association meetings. Sometimes it will be a payment based on the number of delegates who attend. Sometimes it's simply a flat fee. Sometimes it's an amount of money which can be applied to the full price of the convention centre to give a discount. So it's in some way or other, but it's described as a subvention budget because it's a pot of money that sits there for that purpose. Now, some destinations have created this pot in a fairly unsophisticated way so that any event above a certain size might qualify for something. Others are much more strategic, as I mentioned before, where, for example, a biotechnology event would qualify for a much higher subvention than an event on coal mining, for example. So the many different models. So my advice to our friends in Zimbabwe is talk to other ICCA members, find out who is doing this in a way that's very similar to the situation you have. I know the thing to remember in a place like Zimbabwe is that destinations will not go to Zimbabwe because you have put money on the table. They will be going to Zimbabwe because they want to actually deliver the mission of their association in Zimbabwe and Africa, and perhaps other countries like Zimbabwe which are facing similar challenges in healthcare, economic development, developing social structures, for example. Many associations exist in order to try and deliver those benefits.
And it's not always money. I mean, okay, you'd have to say you have to use money in some way, but it's not always money. You know, you could have a destination offering you travel cards around a city or a welcome reception or something like that. So it's not always a case of saying, we will give you X amount of euros. It could be in kind.
Correct.